podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the 1905 podcast, home of the world champions, Chelsea. Each week, Joe and I bring you our unfiltered takes on the highs, the lows, and everything in between, following the Blues from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Thank God that is over. Chelsea win 4-3 at the Molineux, and I think if there was another 10 minutes of that game, I think we'd probably end up losing it 5-4. Oh, that second half was a very, very difficult watch. Having had a very enjoyable first half, it was, a game of two halves. I don't really know whether to start with the positives or the negatives on that one, because there are plenty of both. It really is never a dull moment supporting Chelsea, is it? I'll start with the positives, which were mainly in the first half, let's be fair. And I thought first half we were excellent. Again, that feels like about a day ago at this point, because honestly, I thought we were going to throw that away in the end. But first half, some of the football we played was brilliant. I thought some of the individual performances were superb. And a couple of the guys I'm going to mention now carried that on, I thought, into the second half. I thought that Andrey Santos was fantastic in every facet of his game, in my opinion. The goal, obviously, that starts us off, a great hit on his left foot after some really good pressing, and you kind of seeing that Andrey Santos that we saw so many clips of at Strasbourg, aren't you? And then in the second half, I think we saw the other side of his game, coming in and playing as more of a defensive midfielder and getting in some key challenges, keeping the ball well. I feel like his passing is, if you watch him on either foot, is so assured. It tends to always be in front of the man. Really good pace on it. He's one of those players that instantly I trust every time he has the ball. And I thought he was, in my mind, our best player on the night and was superb. So a really good moment for him, and I think a really important moment for him to get a goal. And I think he's put himself very much in the conversation to start at Tottenham on Saturday. Another guy I want to mention is Hato, who I thought, again, had a genuinely really good game. You're starting to see this player, aren't you, in him, and why he was so highly rated in Holland and by Ajax fans in particular. He's got a bit of everything. I thought it took a little while, didn't he, to settle in at Chelsea. In the first couple of appearances, looked a bit naive, but you're just starting to see someone now who looks really assured whenever he plays. He obviously played at left back and then more of a left centre back role as the game went on, and generally, even amongst the chaos of that second half display, was pretty good, I thought, overall. So shout out for him. And the other guy I want to kind of call out with a positive mention is Jamie Gittens, who, particularly in the first half, looked brilliant, to be fair. Really confident, taking on his man every time he got the ball, had a real swagger and spring in his step, and was doing kind of all the things that you want to see from a player like him, a winger who's asked to go and get the ball, take people on. I think great assist for the Tariq George goal. And just superb. Just a really good display. Second half, he faded massively, like the whole team did, but he hardly had a kick. And it was amazing because just before he scores an absolute worldie, which I'm just watching a replay of now, he looked basically in pieces, like he had nothing left in the tank. He looked absolutely knackered. And then the ball obviously falls to him. And what a goal. What a way to get off the mark with your first Chelsea goal. You want new players to get off the mark as soon as you can. And obviously for him and Andrey Santos to both have got their goals, we know how important that is for them. And great goals from both of them. It's pretty much where the big positives end, isn't it, really? The second half, where do you start with it? Where do you start with the performance? I mean, if Maresca had any hair, he'd have pulled it all out by now, wouldn't he? We started terribly. Lucky not to have conceded within 22 seconds. Right from kickoff, Wolves nearly score. And the best way to describe the game is every single time Wolves put the ball anywhere near our box, you thought they would probably score. And to be fair, they nearly did. They had so many chances in that second half. And I think they'll be looking at almost disappointed that they haven't come away with something from the game, which is insane when you're 3-0 down at half time. I'll let Joe talk maybe into a little bit more detail on what he thinks the problems are defensively, because he's better qualified to. But I think Chelsea have a major problem this season, a major problem, and it is our defending. A lot has been made of missing Palmer and obviously Delap, who we've got to talk about in a second, this season, and maybe missing a little bit of magic. I talked about it after the Sunderland game, missing a little bit of spark to break down these low blocks. But actually, when you look at the numbers of goals scored and how Chelsea have generally performed this season, goals really aren't the problem for us. It is keeping goals out. And you've only got to look at what Arsenal are doing at the moment at the top of the league, grinding out 1-0 wins. Sometimes that's what the Premier League is about. Like any league is about just getting that goal, getting ahead, and then knowing you can, stay in front. Chelsea have won multiple league titles doing exactly that at times in the season, at times in games. And you just know that this Chelsea team cannot do that. And unfortunately, at the moment, you're seeing, I think, a pattern that I can't see it not continuing, which is, let's be fair, makes it very, very difficult to watch, because you're always nervous. Anytime the ball's anywhere near the Chelsea box, that it's chaos ball, isn't it? That's the best way to talk about it. It's absolute chaos when it's bouncing around our box. It's a real worry for me. Chelsea basically got in the Champions League last season, finished fourth, because of our ability to close out games and win quite a few games 1-0 when we needed to at the end of the season. I don't know what has happened, apart from obviously the injury of Levi Colwill, and maybe he is just so important that we're really missing his leadership back there. But we look a completely different side defensively at the moment. And unfortunately, the problem is it becomes sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? Because other teams are watching that and thinking, right, that's the way to get at Chelsea. It's fairly clear that you need to put balls in the box, make set pieces count. Spurs will certainly do it, or try to do it against us on Saturday. We know how dangerous they are from set pieces this season. And it's just very, very difficult. And I'm looking at what Chelsea have built in terms of a squad. And they wouldn't have known that football was going to evolve quite to this degree that it currently is in the Premier League. But we've just not built a squad that is made for this. If you look at the average height of our players, and you can see it just from the eye test, looking at the matches, but certainly if you look at the numbers, we have so many short players. We are always shorter than the opposition that we play against in the Premier League. If you look at our midfielders, I'll start with the fullbacks. Let's take the centre-backs out of the equation, because all centre-backs are tall, right? But the fullbacks, Cucurella and Hato obviously aren't giants, and Reece James and Gusto aren't either. So certainly not renowned for their area ability. Easy for me to say. Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Lavia, and Andrey Santos. None of them are Declan Rice style players, are they? There's no height there. And then the attacking players, obviously, you've got lots of wingers, but again, not a huge amount of height there. And yeah, centre forwards, you've got a bit of height again. But basically, most of that team is not tall, not particularly aerially dominant. And I think it's going to be a big, big problem for us, because this era of the Premier League that we're living at the moment is so direct. And this is probably, it's hard for this not to sound a little bit bitter, I think, because clearly, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're absolutely loving the nature of the league at the moment, and the fact that every team seems to be chucking long throws in and putting set pieces a big part of the game, because you're dominant at it. As a Chelsea fan, it's going to sound really bitter to say this, but it is really dire, isn't it? In terms of what the Premier League currently is, and how slow it is. Every time there's a throw, pretty much within 40 yards now of the goal, most teams are looking to chuck it in the box, which means also waiting 60 seconds for the big guys to go up, waiting for the guy to trot over and take the throw, towel down the ball, etc. And it is so slow. And it's of course not going to end because it's been so effective for teams this year. I think I read a stat that there's 3 times the number of long throws going into the box this season than even last season. And so many teams are scoring from it. So many teams are scoring against Chelsea from it. That why would you not continue to do it? But it's a dire type of football to watch. Let's be fair, it's really pretty dismal. But Chelsea have to find a way to deal with it because it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. Negative performances. I think as a collective, we lost our heads in the second half. So I won't talk on too many of the points. But what I will say is Liam Delap was disgraceful. He wasn't the only one getting stupid bookings. Estevão in the first half, Tyreek George. And actually, Estevão was a bit unlucky, wasn't he, with the bicycle kick, to be fair. But Tyreek George with the silly booking. And then Liam Delap, he came on. It was almost like he was a man with a mission to get himself sent off. And can you imagine, you've spent the best part of 3 months trying to get yourself fit, get yourself back playing again. He must have been so desperate to play. And he's immediately got himself suspended. It will probably be 1 game because it's obviously 2 yellows, but immediately rules himself out of the Spurs game. And you just kind of look at it and go, you idiot. What are you doing? And I'm not even going to sympathise and say, was he unlucky with either of the bookings? Because I think if there hadn't been those 2, it could have been another couple of incidents that he was going for as well. It was almost he'd wound himself up and was completely useless to us. And it's just so frustrating. And Maresca has been asked quite a lot in the press over not just this season, but last season about whether we had a discipline problem. And he's always played it down. He's always said no. But he's talking crap, isn't he? That there is clearly a problem, and we can put it down to naivety or young players or lack of leadership, whatever it might be, but they have to sort it because we are making life so difficult for ourselves. It's a hard enough league to play in without always giving yourself basically 10 men. And honestly, I feel very lucky that we got through that game without throwing it away in painful fashion, which, let's be fair, would have been a disaster. Having been 3-0 up, I think it would have been a really hard one if we'd ended up losing that game. But we didn't. We're in the hat for the next round, and I'll finish on that note. The draw hasn't been made at the time of recording. Let's hope it's a good one. And at the end of the day, the competition's opening up a little bit, isn't it? With a few teams going out tonight. Obviously, Spurs have gone out, Liverpool have gone out. You just want a decent draw and a chance to go and finally bury that little web of Wembley hoodoo that it's become. So let's hope we can do it. But yeah, feeling a bit weird after that one, I have to say. That was a really, really difficult second half to watch. But onwards and upwards. Come on, you Blues.
Good morning from a very sunny Spain. I am currently in Barcelona watching my son in a football tournament here, which has been a lot of fun, a lot of joy for him, very eye-opening for the parents of our children and watching other teams play and how the Spanish and the Italians and stuff move the ball around. And it's been really, really brilliant, and our boys have competed just as hard and just as aggressively as they have, and it's just really nice to see how sort of 2 or 3 different styles of football and how we approach the game to how the Spanish and the Italians, etc., approach the game. So, yeah, it's been very, very good. I'm currently sitting on a sunbed overlooking Bar Coco Loco, which is a rather nice spot to be. Much nicer than being at Molineux, I would have thought yesterday, but there we go. Very touch and go with the result. I know it was seemingly, unbelievably never going to lose, and then suddenly it was like panic stations and, well, what seems to be typical Chelsea over the last few seasons. We just not all the time, and like Chris alluded to in his voice note, we went for a stage where we could kind of pick up 1-0 wins, and it seemed like we could see a game out and defend relatively kind of competently. But at the moment, a lot of that skill in terms of being stubborn has seemingly gone away. What was a remarkable start to the game. 3 goals in the first half and 2 goals in the opening 14, 15 minutes. And Chelsea playing some really lovely football out from the back. Really, again, the goal that Tariq George scored, for example, and was just a beautiful passage of play, sequence of passes, and finished off with a nice finish in front of goal. Obviously, Andrey Santos getting, I believe, is that his first goal for the club? Maybe he got one in pre-season, but I'm sure it's his first goal for the club in a real proper game. Finishing low to Jose Sá's left. And of course, Estevão's just quite remarkable chip lob flick thing. God knows what that was. It was quite remarkable. And I think that at that point, you just thought that Wolves would throw in the towel. They're bottom of the league. I don't think they've even won a Premier League game this season. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they looked devoid of all confidence. They were giving Chelsea gifts. I mean, the first goal, even though you could argue there's a fair bit to do when Chelsea get the ball, obviously it's given away by Wolverhampton, and then Andrey Santos puts it in the bottom corner, and then obviously Jose Sá and his defender make a mix-up for Estevão's lob. And so, yeah, Wolves helped us kind of get on the score sheet, and Chelsea were punishing them and were very, very clinical. But again, after the break, what happened? This will be the theme of many podcasts. It will be the theme of many media stories and what have you. But Chelsea's inability to see games out is staggering. I mean, you're playing the worst team in the Premier League at the moment. They are probably as low on confidence as anybody in the country right now. There's probably Championship clubs and Division 1 clubs that would probably give you a game a bit more than Wolves at the moment, because they just don't know how to score a goal. And then Chelsea, once again, they just capitulate. The 2 centre-halves didn't cover themselves in glory. I think if we start with Achampong, I think he didn't have his best night. He didn't have his best half by any means. But he's a young man. He's a rookie. We've said this a couple of times. He's going to make mistakes. And if you're going to make a few mistakes here and there, then make them in the League Cup. Don't make them in the Premier League. And we know he's a quality player. And I think youngsters like him will learn from those sorts of evenings. And even though he didn't do anything drastically wrong, it was just sometimes his positional sense was out of the way, or he got out-muscled, or perhaps showed a little bit of a lack of desire to get back in and make a block. As for his partner in crime, Tosin, for his fantastically dreadful performance against Sunderland, then gets the nod alongside him, but also is made captain. Now, it just seems to be now, if you're over the age of 25, you get the captaincy, which is absolutely ridiculous. Tosin is not a captain of Chelsea Football Club. He shouldn't be playing for Chelsea Football Club. He's not good enough. I'm sorry, just not good enough whatsoever. No more so. We can talk about every goal individually, and I won't go through those errors, but the last goal was just absolutely hilarious. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's 4-2 to Chelsea. And you know what they're going to do? They've just stuck everybody in our 18-yard box. And when it's coming down the pipe like that, straight down the middle, Jose Sá is only doing one thing. He's just going to kick it as hard and as long as he can. And you want your biggest, bravest, strongest captain on the evening to come out and just head that ball 40 yards away and get the line up 20 yards and kind of put Wolves to the sword. Chelsea probably make a counter-attack at that point, go and get a corner, maybe go and get a goal. But what does he do? He lets the centre-forward pin him, and he actually wins the ball and flicks it on over his head. And Tosin doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Am I the only one that's noticing this? He just seems to be like he doesn't know what day of the week it is. Like, the ball's flicked over his head, but he sort of just stands and watches. It's just very, very bizarre. He's not a good player. I don't know how long we can keep going with this sort of... He sort of comes in for these games. He sort of gets 2 games in a row every now and again, and then he comes out the side for 3 weeks, and suddenly he's back in for 2 games. And I just don't understand why we're having this constant merry-go-round. I mean, I get it last night because it's the League Cup. I can sort of see that, but the fact that he played, in my opinion, it was maybe not solely at fault, but certainly a major reason why Sunderland scored that last-minute winner at the weekend. And a player seemingly with his experience should not be making mistakes like this. And he doesn't win first balls, he doesn't win second balls. He's not aggressive in the tackle, he's not aggressive in winning his duels. He's quite soft, if I'm being honest with you. He's 6'5", and he doesn't seem to be able to win anything. It's a little bit pathetic. I mean, the Europa Conference League really was about his level, quite frankly. I mean, I'm looking at it going, you're nowhere near this Chelsea team, and Maresca, for some reason, just keeps picking him, and it's almost like we're picking him based on his age bracket and nothing else. So, yeah, just very disappointed in him once again, just not good enough. And I don't want Tosin Adebayo leading my team out as captain. I'm sorry, I just don't want to see it anymore. It's not going to change. Maresca seems to like him, but I just don't know how many chances you keep giving the bloke. He's just not good enough in the back. It's just simple facts. I mentioned Chelsea being 4-2 up just there. I will give a mention to Jamie Gittens, 2 assists and a wonder strike. Let's hope that he can gain some momentum from this, because I gave him a bit of stick at the weekend, not just because of the game at the weekend, but he's basically his first 10, 11 games of the season, whatever it is we've played, it has been dreadfully poor. He's not looked like anybody that's going to assist or score a goal for us at any stage of the season. But last night, credit where it's due, he looked lively. Obviously, his balls into the box were dangerous and obviously cutting, because we scored goals from them. And of course, his goal at the end was absolutely remarkable, and what ended up being the winner. But again, like I think Chris may have said this in his voice note previously, if that game goes a few more minutes, you just see that Wolves are certainly going to equalise. Whether they go and win the game, who knows, because the time's running out. But I think if had there been two or three more minutes, I think it would have been certainly a harum-scarum moment, because I just couldn't see, with all that momentum, if Wolves had got an equaliser, I think Chelsea would probably lose that on penalties, just because of the way the game had gone. So, yeah, we sort of thank our lucky stars that we managed to scrape through. Because of the kick-off times for my son and the travel time back and things, I've not seen the Chelsea game all the way through from start to finish. I was watching it from afar slightly and then grabbed moments when I could. But because Chelsea scored some early goals, it did mean that Wolves had to come out at us. And we did create chances ourselves after in between the Wolves chances, we had some too. And that's encouraging, because I don't think Spurs at the weekend are going to be the sort of team that are going to sit back at home and sort of play a low block. I don't see that. Where I see Spurs potentially scoring goals is from set pieces, long throws, corners, etc. Obviously, Chelsea failed to deal with yet another long throw. Once again, Tosin at the front of that queue, ball comes in the box, gets flicked over his head, flicks over the next one, then the next one it goes to Strand Larsen, and he scored to make it 3-2, I think, or something like that. And that's where I see Spurs getting their joy. They'll be launching it in. Van der Ven scored 2 goals last weekend, we know that, and they've got some players that can hurt us in the box if we're not careful. We just have this real massive inability to defend balls into our box, which is just painful. I mean, it's painful to watch. I mean, they have to get a grasp on this. They have to come up with some kind of plan to stop this happening, because you can't keep gifting teams goals. It's just madness. It's complete. It's like we're hoping that they don't do it. We're hoping to come across a team that won't do it, but everybody now who watches Chelsea will just be like, just stick it in the box at every opportunity. They can't defend it. So that's one way I think we can concede. But what will be good for us is that, say, Spurs will come out and try and play. And that will give Chelsea licence to cut through them like we did against Wolves, and we have done against a lot of other sides, like Liverpool, for example. We had lots of opportunities against Liverpool because we were allowed to get in behind them, because they created space for us, because they came forward. And I think that's something we've got to try to exploit as much as possible. I think we're not going to see Tosin for the Spurs game. I'd be absolutely shocked if we did. Quite frankly, I'll probably turn the telly off if I see Tosin start. But what I will say about Tottenham-Chelsea games is that the players do seem to understand what it means. And I think you're going to see a fairly typical Chelsea team at the weekend. Obviously, we've got no Liam Delap, because he was a complete twat last night. I mean, I've never known anything like it. A player that's been missing for so long, we're desperately crying out for him, and he must have known this. He's not stupid, and to do what he did with a few minutes to go, having not been on the pitch that long, just screams of just complete and utter stupidity. We've had something like 7 red cards in 7 games or something. It's just madness, like complete and utter madness. What on earth is going through these players' minds? I actually don't. It's so. We can talk about them being young, but there's being young and being fucking dim. I mean, it's beyond belief. We're now having to go into the Spurs game. This is the slight worrying thing. I thought we'd have the lap there, at least for half a game, maybe. We're now having to go in with it with Tariq George, who did well last night and scored another goal. Or Mark Guiu, who's a very honest player, but I think he's more of an impact player at this stage in his career. And neither of them, I guarantee you, to score a goal. At least with Delap, you felt like he would cause them all sorts of problems. And he would sort of enjoy a hustle and bustle with the Spurs defenders. You know, he could even potentially wind them up to get them sent off. But no, yet again, Chelsea have shot themselves in the foot. They now are without, you know, one of their talismans, star strikers from the summer transfer window. And frankly, it's just, at this stage, something has to be done about it, I think. Maresca says he doesn't like to punish his players. He likes them to learn from their mistakes. Well, they're not learning, are they? Because every single week it's a different player getting a red card. I mean, it's nuts. I mean, I don't know if I've ever watched any team be this stupid with red cards. If someone can email in or let us know if there's been a run of games where a team, particularly one of Chelsea's stature, has managed to get so many red cards week after week after week. It's absurd. And I think that is what is going to be the difference between Chelsea finishing 3rd, 4th or 9th, quite frankly. Our inability to keep 11 players on the pitch at this stage of the season is all very well saying that this isn't the business end, you know, it comes later on in the season. Well, you make life easier for yourself now. And we're dropping points to teams that aren't really in our league because we have a real deficiency in keeping 11 players on the pitch. And you're dropping points left, right and centre to sides that really shouldn't be anywhere near you. I mean, we talked about Man United and teams like that the other week. They're dreadful. And yet they've gone past us in the league. And you're letting these teams grow and develop. You're not keeping them back in their place where they should be. I keep telling people that Chelsea are a far better side than United. They're a far better side than Brighton or whatever. And yet, our own Brighton haven't done quite so well of late, but we always seem to slip up against them. And I'm just struggling to understand why we are so incapable of not kicking the ball away when we don't need to, or Sanchez not time wasting when he doesn't need to, or like Liam Delap last night, you're on a yellow card, and the very next time the ball comes in, he throws an elbow at a centre half. Like, it's crazy how mad it is. And I think even though Spurs are a team that we've always had a very, very good record against, you know, like, I'm not one of these people that you always think, like, at some stage that's going to bloody turn. At some stage, you know, we're going to get caught out. We're going to do something daft again at the weekend, and we're going to get another red card, and we're going to lose that game or draw that game. They've got to be very, very careful. I think that you're going to see Enzo come back. You're going to see Neto coming to the side, but I would really like to see Estevão Willian play this game. I think we keep seeming to play him in like the weaker game at the moment, which is a bit strange. I think this is a great opportunity. He scored another goal last night. I think he needs to start the game, whatever happens. He's bloody 18 or whatever he is. He's fucking fit. He's not unfit, for crying out loud. He can play 2 games in a week. It's nonsense. Chelsea are struggling and devoid of other players at the moment. They need to have somebody who's capable of going and providing a little bit of magic, a bit like Cole Palmer. So I think for me, he has to start. And if Chelsea do fail to beat Spurs at the weekend, you know, it's going to really dent our pride for one, but it's going to dent our kind of run into the Christmas period, because you're going to be finding yourselves scraping and trying to claw back these points. And I know that at the weekend City ended up losing and Liverpool ended up losing and what have you, but you just feel like these teams will eventually get it together. So we have to stay in the fight. We just cannot keep letting these sides get away from us. And at the moment, the weekend's game seems to be like a game that it feels like must win in a weird way. It really, really does. We can't keep saying after every 2 wins we sort of say, oh, you know, another season-defining game. I mean, how many season-defining games can you have in a 6-week period? I mean, it's absolutely nonsensical, really. I think Chris is going to give a more detailed aspect on the Spurs game in our last voice note today, so I'll leave him to kind of finish on that. But I just want to bring back to the Wolves game just to finish off here. What I will say is that it's a League Cup match. So yes, there were some crazy things that happened. Yes, the defending yesterday at times was absolutely fucking terribly bad, like terribly bad. But cup matches are always a little bit weird. You do get them. FA Cup and League Cup matches, as long as I've been alive, these games sometimes never make sense. We've come back from big deficits in the past and won games, or drawn games and then won on penalties, and we've also done the same thing in defeat. And what I will say is this: at the very least, Chelsea won the game. They won it in 90 minutes. They got through, and I say you can't ask for any more than that. If you'd said at the start of the game Chelsea are going to win that game 4-3, you would just sort of say, right, brilliant, nice. That was an exciting game, and move on. What I will say is, like Chris said, Chelsea are capable of scoring a goal, but so they're keeping us excited, at least in that area of the field. But my goodness me, they need to start shutting the door. But last year, if you remember, when Chelsea was scoring goals, Maresca decided at some point, it was roughly halfway through the season, you could see him really working on the back four, and Chelsea started scoring one goal a week, and we would try and win 1-0 or maybe 2-1. So don't be surprised if he suddenly decides that if this carries on, he decides to go a bit more defensive, and that might end up kind of taking away some of our free-flowing football. So I hope that doesn't happen, because he's got Cole Palmer, he's got Estevão, he's got these wonderful players, these creative players at his disposal, and they won't want to play defensive football, that's for sure. But I can see, if things are starting to go awry, or we start to drop more points by playing this way, that he will start to go defensive again. But listen, I'll hand back over to Chris for his summary and the build-up to the Spurs game. But at least we won. We're through to the next round. We have Cardiff away in the next round, which is a very favourable draw, although you can't count any chickens when you're Chelsea fans at the moment, because the team is quite up and down. But at least we have an opportunity to get through to the next round if we put in a good performance against Cardiff. So still a very good win, a win to win whoever you play, and particularly against a Premier League outfit, although we made serious hard work at that.
Good morning from London, where it's certainly less sunny than it is in Barcelona, I'm sure. I've got to have one final word on the Wolves game before we talk about Spurs, because I completely forgot to mention it last night. I think I was still in some sort of state of shock after that second half display and getting over the fact that we'd scraped through. But wow, Jorgensen, this is going to sound harsh, but I cannot remember a worse Chelsea goalkeeper in the last 10 or 20 years in terms of his performances. I actually don't think he probably is that bad a goalkeeper, but I think where his head is currently at, I think he's completely lost confidence. And again, I talked a little bit last night about the fact that we've got a few players who are struggling with this direct style of football that we're seeing a lot at the moment in the Premier League in England, and he epitomises it better than anyone, because any ball that came anywhere near his head, until he claimed one, didn't he, very late on, which was, in fairness to him, a good claim and an important one to kind of finish the game. But up until then, it was just horrific, wasn't it? Like, there was that one, I mean, there was a few, but there was one that in the second half came over his back post. He just completely missed it. And he's just one of those players, we saw it in the earlier round against Lincoln. You're just thinking teams are, exactly as Joe said, just thinking get the ball in the Chelsea box. And with him in goal, it's a massive, massive issue. So, yeah, I just had to mention that. You look at someone like Penders, who seems to be doing well at Strasbourg still. Lots of talk about whether he'll come in next season. I mean, in the fact that he is over 2 meters tall, he's the same height as Thibaut Courtois, actually. I looked this up because I geek out on heights and things like that. And actually, it's well set up for him to come in and be a Chelsea goalkeeper right now because of his aerial ability and that fact alone. But that is one for next summer. Unfortunately, we'll be stuck with what we've got until then. But I had to mention Jorgensen because it's really concerning, and I never thought I'd say it, but praying that Rob Sanchez stays fit and available, because yeah, we certainly need him right now. Let's talk about Spurs then. I mean, so many great memories against Spurs in my Chelsea supporting life. I think genuinely, I mean, it's an incredible record, isn't it? over the last 35 years, I can remember a handful of defeats. There have been only a handful of defeats. You can pretty much count them on one hand. It's really been quite a remarkable run, unlike anything else really in the Premier League, and bizarre when you think about. It's the really strange thing about sport and about football, isn't it? That you can have different managers, different players, different owners even, and somehow these records against certain teams continue, and it's like a mental challenge, whatever it might be. And we have an amazing record even at the new Spurs stadium, where we've won, I think, 4 out of 5 visits there, if my numbers are right. Last year's was a crazy game. If you remember back, it was the Cucurella boot gate, where he changed boots after about half an hour. We went 2-0 down, a brilliant goal by Jadon Sancho, and then really just a brilliant second half display from Chelsea with magic from Cole Palmer, a big goal from Enzo Fernandez, and those 2 penalties from Palmer, including that amazing Penenka. He won't be available, which is a huge miss, I think. I mean, it goes without saying, but I think in these big games, you really feel the pain of not having a talisman there. How do I feel about the game? I'll be honest, I'm nervous. I'm always nervous about playing Spurs, because I always think that you can have an amazing record, but the things, it's going to change eventually, isn't it, as Joe said, and you certainly can't be overconfident. And that, I think, under Thomas Frank, we'll hand over to Carl, who is a very good friend of Joe and mine, and a big Spurs fan, to give us his thoughts on the game. He also listens to the show, Carl, bless him. So he'll give us a kind of a bit of his thoughts about where Spurs are under Frank. So I'll let him come in with that. But Spurs have shown that they can beat the bigger sides this year. They've had an incredible win at Man City, and I think they'll make life difficult for us. That's what I've got in my head, and particularly I'm worried about set pieces. As Joe alluded to, is where Spurs are very strong, and it's clearly where Chelsea are very weak. What do I think that Chelsea will do team-wise? I don't know, is honestly. I think there's a few areas of question mark, I think, of the team this week. I think it's not as easy or as obvious as it maybe has been. I think against Sunderland, I think I pretty much picked the team bang on the 11 it was. I think the more interesting areas probably are what we do in attack, and whether he goes with João Pedro and Marc Guéhi, or whether he goes with another midfielder. My gut feeling is he'll probably put another midfielder in, so we'll see Caicedo alongside maybe a Lavia or an Andrey Santos, with Enzo Fernandez in the 10, and then either João Pedro or Marc Guéhi up top. Probably João Pedro, let's be fair. We know Pedro Neto will come back in, and I'm kind of with Joe, really. I just would really love to see Estevão start, for all of the reasons Joe said. I didn't even mention his goal last night. I mean, Joe did. It was beautiful, wasn't it? Absolutely stunning finish. That's what I'd like to see. My gut feeling is it'll probably be Garnacho, but yeah, we will see. And I guess the other one worth mentioning is Wesley Fofana, because he's back fit, has been on the bench 2 games running now, and I think it will tell us a lot about where Maresca's head is with him, in terms of has he lost a bit of faith with him or not? Because I think if he hasn't, and he still believes in the Wes Fofana that we've spent 70 million on, then he'll start on Saturday, and probably alongside Trev Chalobah. I think if he doesn't, then I think it's a pretty telltale sign that he's down the pecking order now officially, after these injuries and some less than amazing performances. But I'll hand over to Carl for his preview on the game, and then I'll come back for a final word from myself.
Hi, Chris and Joe. Thank you very much for having me back on the 1905 podcast. I'm speaking to you fresh off the back of our Carabao Cup exit at Newcastle last night, so I'm not in the most positive frame of mind, let's say, but I'll try and offer a balanced look at where Tottenham is as a club right now. And the bottom line is really that compared to last season, it's all change on and off the pitch. We're a very different club to the one that you faced last year. Daniel Levy, of course, is out after 25 years. That's the big news. He was forced out by the ownership. There's no question about that. He's a guy who was very good at generating revenue and raising profile, but also, let's be honest, lining his own pockets. And 3 trophies in 25 years will be his legacy among the fan base. And I would say the fan base is pretty happy as a whole that he's gone. We've got a new leadership team in place as a result. And in addition, ENIC, aka the Joe Lewis family trust, they've taken a more active interest in the club, it seems, particularly through Joe Lewis's children. I think they're the ones who forced Levy out, it seems. And we've had a £100 million capital injection in October. They seem to be at games more. Time will tell if it's more of the same or if they really are interested in competing on the pitch. We'll see the evidence of that, I guess, in the next few transfer windows. And on the pitch, the kind of chaotic Ange Postecoglou era came to an end with a trophy after that night in Bilbao, beating Man United in the Europa League. Everyone associated with Spurs will be eternally grateful to Ange for ending that kind of 17-year trophy hoodoo. Although there's no question it came at a price. 17th in the league, the worst domestic campaign that any contemporary fan can remember, that's for sure. Now, there were a combination of factors leading to that. Ange said he phoned in the league campaign, basically, and sacrificed it. We had a much publicised injury crisis as well. More on that shortly, unfortunately. Perhaps, I'd say more so, the refusal by Ange to adapt or change tactically was a real problem. You know, that kind of attitude of vibes, or that's just who we are, mate. You know, that famous famous saying. Unfortunately, that didn't fly in the end, and I think it was right that we moved on from Ange. I really do. There's one more big change too, in the kind of talismanic club captain Heung-min Son left for the US, and despite his undoubtedly waning effectiveness, and we saw evidence of that last season, he just isn't the same player. He leaves a huge hole at Spurs in terms of character and soul, if you will, and the link to the fans. He was Mr. Tottenham, and him going is a big loss. So it's Thomas Frank in charge now, a guy who was so impressive at Brentford, and his approach, for better or worse, it couldn't be more different to Postecoglou's. Gone are the vibes, the back four on the halfway line, the fullbacks in midfield, set pieces as an afterthought, and in has come greater pragmatism, more shape, more defensive solidity, certainly, and set pieces being a real strength at both ends of the pitch. But as with anything, your strength is also your weakness. In sacrificing that more open, expressive style for better structure, we've lost a lot of our attacking zip on the pitch. Now, obviously, we're third in the early stages of what is a very clustered Premier League table, but I think, if you're being honest, performances have been at best effective and at worst pretty stodgy and uninspiring. Open play creativity has been in pretty short supply, and actually our home form's been really average. We've got the 17th best home record in the league, whereas we've got the best away record, and I think we're the only unbeaten away side in the Premier League. That really is down to how Thomas Frank sets the team up, which is really strong away from home, but less effective when teams come to Spurs. He's got this favoured double pivot of Paulinho and Rodrigo Bentancur, which is very solid. And Paulinho, to be fair, has been a superb signing in terms of the off-the-ball stuff. But neither of them are really good at moving the ball through the lines with any kind of speed or quality. And if you couple that with Xavi Simon's slow adaptation to the Premier League, then creativity's kind of in short supply. And that's exacerbated by our old friend, the injury crisis, something that's blighted Tottenham for 3 or 4 years now. Of course, through the whole Postecoglou reign, it was a problem. As of last night's game, I think the list of first-team players unavailable is 10 or 11. Now, the longer-term injuries, which normally are the easiest to plan around, they're the ones that are hurting us the most, because Dejan Kulusevski's been out since the end of last season, and James Maddison did his ACL in pre-season, and he's probably going to miss, if not most of, then maybe the entire campaign. That's a lot of goals and assists lost, and also a lot of freedom and creativity. So we've lost that from our game. And then Dom Solanke, who has barely kicked a ball this season. Now, he's not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not saying he's an elite player, but his skill in holding the ball up and running the channels and linking play, we've really missed that this season. On top of all of that, and all the other guys who are out, Christian Romero, who's our new club captain, he's also been injured the last 3 games with an abductor strain. Now, Romero, it's not just about his defending, and he is underrated, I think, outside of Spurs, but it's his passing. We don't have anyone in the midfield or the defence who can play line-breaking passes from deep and get us through a press. And that's what we miss most when Romero's not there, because he's a really skillful footballer. So we've got some problems in terms of injuries, there's no question about that. So that brings us quite neatly onto the game on Saturday evening and where it might be won and lost. Now, if Romero's still injured, then Kevin Danso will play alongside Mickey van der Ven, probably with Porro and Spence, then Bentancur and Paulinho in front. Now, it's a really solid unit off the ball, but not so much on it, as I've already mentioned. I think Chelsea will get loads of joy if you press high up the pitch. We just won't be able to play through any kind of press, and you've got Vicario in goal as well, who is really poor with the ball at his feet. So if you press high, make us go long, you'll get lots of turnovers, because our strikers generally this season, in the absence of Solanke, haven't been able to hold the ball up in duels, particularly aerial duels. Richarlison's really weak and poor at that. So if you can make us go long and direct, then you'll turn the ball over. Also target Porro. While he's much improved defensively, he's still a weak one-on-one defender, and he leaves big gaps when he goes marauding up the pitch. So I'd be looking to get my best 1v1 winger on that side of the pitch. Stopping Spurs from open play is pretty easy at the moment. Keep a central shape. We can't play through. We really struggle. Force us to go wide and double up on Kudus, who is by far and away our best creative outlet. If you can do that and force Spurs to go left to probably Brennan Johnson or Tell, well, they're just nowhere near as effective. That's a pretty simple way of stopping Spurs on the ball. If you flip the coin and see how Spurs can hurt you, set pieces. I know it's been a problem for you this season. I do listen to the podcast, but we're probably the second most effective side from corners after Arsenal. And I'd say that at both ends of the pitch, defending we've improved as well compared to the Ange era. I think Mickey van der Ven's our top scorer this season with 5. We're really dangerous from corners. Kevin Danso, if he plays, has a long throw too, and I know that's an area you've struggled in this season, so watch out for his long throw. In terms of open play, if Kudus has a good game, Spurs do. And there's a bit of a wild card as well in the shape of Randall Kolo-Muani, who we've got on loan from PSG. When we signed him, he picked up an injury immediately after joining, but he's working his way back. He started against Everton up front. He was a massive upgrade on Richarlison in terms of being able to link play, carry the ball, hold people off. He was on the bench against Newcastle last night, so I assume he might start on Saturday if he's fit. So he might bring a bit of a wild card, a bit of an extra dimension to our attack in terms of retaining the ball in high areas. Obviously, we've only got 1 home league win this season compared to 4 away wins. And given Chelsea's extremely good record against Spurs, as I said last year, this is my least favourite fixture of the year. I'm not particularly confident about winning the game. I go for a conservative 1-1 draw. I think Chelsea have more ways to hurt Tottenham in open play, and we will be a real threat from set pieces. So I expect it to be tight and maybe come down to 1 or 2 moments rather than being a goal fest.
Massive thank you to Carlo for that fantastic summary from the Spurs perspective. Carl's probably the only Spurs man in the world that listens to the Chelsea podcast, and really appreciate his views. So I think, how does that make me feel about the game? Well, it makes me feel like even more likely we're gonna concede from a set piece, aren't we? How did Chelsea put an end to that? How do we get more solid at set pieces? Because Spurs are going to target us on that. There is no question at all. And as I mentioned last night, going through basically the squad makeup that we have, we just haven't got a lot of height. So Chelsea are going to have to really think that through in terms of an approach. And you're really looking at Rob Sanchez being aggressive, aren't you? Particularly for throw-ins. I heard this talked about in the Sunderland game, talking about goalkeepers being a bit more aggressive on throws, playing on the 6-yard box, basically being there to go and claim the ball. Sanchez has got the height, and actually probably one of his strengths is that, let's be fair, is claiming those high balls when he's on his game. So you're looking at him to really be dominant in that perspective. And I wonder if it affects the centre-back choices as well. Chalobah will play. I think that's the easy option. We know that he's had a week's rest. I think he's been a little bit up and down this season, but we know that he'll start. So then it's who do you play alongside him? And I wonder if Joe's favourite player, Tosin's going to play for his height. I don't want him to. I really don't want him to. I'd like to see Fofana or Achimpong, I think, but we'll see. We will see. Cucurella against Kudus will be a really good battle, I think. You probably, if you wanted to pick where Spurs' strongest out kind of attacking player would be, you'd want it on the right because Cucurella is so good. So Cucurella will relish that matchup, there's no doubt. And with Porro on the right as well, I wonder if we'll get the wish that we asked for earlier, and I wonder if they'll be tempted to play Pedro Neto on the left and put Estevão on the right to kind of give two very kind of good dribbling options going forward. But as I said, it may well be Garnacho. It's a big game. This is going to sound really negative and probably going to get a lot of stick from my Chelsea supporting mates for this, but I think I'd probably take a draw, to be honest. I think the little patch we're in with these injuries and just looking a little bit vulnerable, I don't want to fall further behind Spurs, who will most likely be one of our rivals for Champions League this year. I don't think a draw at Spurs would be a bad result, and then we dust ourselves down and just try and get a little run of wins going together again. My big feeling is we have to stay in this season, stay in and around it for when we get people like Cole Palmer back, Liam Delap back when he's not suspended and in fact fully fit, and maybe even Levi Colwill if he can come back before the end of the season. I just think we need to stay in and around it for as long as possible and make sure that we don't fall away from that pack. So yeah, big game, big night, and we'll be back on Sunday to reflect on the game. So keep it locked, and remember, every little thing's going to be all right, even from set pieces. Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be all right.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.